Hi, everyone. This is Raquel.
Hi, and this is Jennifer.
Welcome to Madness Cafe.
This is a feminist podcast where we talk about women's issues, politics, and health and wellness.
And where those issues intersect. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Madness Cafe. Today, we are joined by Jasmine Styles. And let me read you Jasmine's bio. It's a lengthy one, but it's worth it. It's awesome. Jasmine Styles has been helping write the first draft of history as a news anchor and reporter for more than a decade. She has primarily worked in the South, but had a short stint in the Midwest. Jasmine has been literally in the eye of a hurricane, just behind yellow crime scene tape, and in the front row during historical moments. Jasmine is on the board of and treasurer of the largest minority journalism organization, the National Association of Black Journalists, and has served as president for 2 affiliate chapters. Through networking, mentorship, friendship, and her own experiences, Jasmine has been able to get multiple perspectives on how news works, what needs to be fixed, a lot, and what the future holds for the media. Jasmine is a Florida State University graduate and a Sunshine State native. She's also a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Jasmine Styles, welcome to Madness Cafe.
Thanks for having me, Jennifer and Raquel. I appreciate it.
We are so excited to dive into all of the controversial stuff in the media. But first, would you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started or where you are now?
Yes, I didn't know I wanted to be in news. It wasn't because I wasn't educated about it. My family is a big news watcher. We're from Orlando, so weren't really loyal. We hopped around, we read the paper. Like that was news consumption was a big part of my family. But I kind of figured like being on the news was kind of like being a singer. Like not everyone can be it, and you have to like get discovered and like then maybe you can do it. Like only the few are chosen, like that kind of thing. So
Right.
originally I wanted to be a chemist. When I was little, I had like a science set and I really thought I wanted to do chemistry, but I'm not math smart. So that like went out the window really quick. And when I went to Florida State orientation, where my mom also went, I was just like, I guess I'll just be a business major. Like I was a good student. Like I was in honor society. I was like in the top 25 of my class. Like I was a smart kid, but I just was like, I don't know. I'm a smart kid because I'm supposed to be smart. Like I'm not, I just knew I couldn't fail. So I was like, I'm going to college because I'm supposed to, not necessarily because I had this burning desire to do more work. And so when I went, I was like doing business stuff and I'm like, oh my God, this is math. I can't do this. I can't do this. And I was like, I'm just going to be exploratory. My mom was pissed. She was like, so what does that mean? Like, what are you going to do? Like that? I'm like, I don't know. We're going to just figure it out. Freshman year, you kind of have nothing going on. Like you're just getting there. So all you're doing is homework and like going to eat. Like you're getting in the freshman 15 and studying. That's it. And so we got this like all call because Florida State owns a PBS station. And it was essentially like glorified morning announcements. So I was like, that's something. I did like TV production, like let's do it. So I went in for like my audition and the lady came out, she was like, you're the last person and you're the best person we've had all day. Like, do you want to do this as a
Wow.
And I'm like, I didn't know you could do that as a lady. She was like, you need to seriously consider this. And I'm like, okay. Well, I did that program on University Update, and then it was like a thing called Florida Statements, which was like an interview show. I'm like, okay, maybe this is something I'd like to do. Florida State doesn't have a J school. So I was like, okay, all I can do is comms. And then we had like 2 classes, one that's like more general assignment reporting, and another was sports. And so I did that, and my counselor was like, actually, we have a program with Florida A&M University, which is the HBCU across the street. And they were like, you can do your journalism class over there. I was like, yeah. So I minored in journalism by going to Florida A&M University. If I hadn't picked Florida State, I might not have been able to be a journalist because it doesn't exist there. That's kind of how I got bit by the bug. And that's where I discovered NABJ, the National Association of Black Journalists, which was like a nice little wake-up call. They essentially did like a multimedia boot camp, and I got chosen for that. And like one of my mentors who I met there is actually on the board with me. I call him like my news pops. And we ended up working in the same market in Tampa, which is the number 11 to 12 market in the US. So
wow.
Yeah, like that really like shifted me in gear to like do better. But no, I had no idea I wanted to do news. Although I clearly, was into current events, I was into like learning news and stuff. I just didn't think it was a career that you could do, if that makes any sense. I just didn't have the career exposure to know that.
But you've been wildly successful.
It's really worked out for me. I mean, I think my mom and dad like always brag because they have two really successful kids. Normally there's always one F up. Like there's one kid who's not doing well. But my little sister's a doctor and I'm a news anchor and we do pretty well for ourselves. So my parents would always, talk about like what they did. And I call it like when I tell people on like how to like figure out what they like, I call it breadcrumbing. So essentially like I feel like I had these breadcrumbs that led me to what I do now. And I didn't even realize that. So first of all, I was the kid who was always getting in trouble for talking, like talk, 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 talk. Twos in conduct. It'd be like Jasmine is the sweetest, smartest kid in the world, but God, does she have a mouth on her? Like that was always the thing. And so it wasn't that I was bad. I just like to talk a lot for group presentations. I was always the person they were like, Jasmine, you go talk. Like you talk, you do it. I did actually like in third grade, I learned how to read a teleprompter because
Wow.
I did it was like book reviews for like Orange County Public School, like closed network or whatever. And so
Neat.
that I knew how to read a teleprompter in third grade. That's not a skill
cool.
that everyone has or gets to even use. I did TV production in middle school, and I have 2 stars that I still have to this day. And they say like most likely to be on Entertainment Tonight and most likely to be the next Oprah Winfrey. Like those were my things. So I've always had these little things that put me in the realm of that, but I just didn't think news. And then I was a musical theater kid, and I feel like the musical theater kid to news person pipeline is very strong. So
Really?
I guarantee if a lot of news people that you will talk to probably did some type of theater or musical theater in their background. Like that pipeline is so strong.
I had no idea.
Yep. Yep. So that,
Wow.
like I said, all these kind of things culminated into making me a strong orator. I'm a spelling bee champ in 2 schools. So yeah, like I'm big on the
Yes.
spelling bee. Yeah,
Yes.
like I'm a nerd. So like me and words go together
Yeah.
real good. I used to write short stories. That was all in like my wheelhouse, but I never translated it to news. So now looking back on all those things, I'm like, oh, like, yeah, I was like destined to do this.
Totally.
That's awesome. Fun fact about me, when I was a little kid, spelling was my favorite thing. I literally would run home with like our vocab list as soon as we'd get it from the teacher, be like, Mom, quiz me. And like, because, nerd,
Right,
I see you right here. One of my proudest moments as a child was when I learned how to spell pterodactyl.
That's a hard word.
Yeah, it is.
And I don't know if you guys had spelling bees, but the words that I miss haunt me to this day. Lieutenant and limousine. I will never not know how to spell those.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I can't relate to any of this. Sorry.
Like I was a cool kid. You nerds. I was picking on you guys. I was stealing y'all lunch money and kicking y'all in the playground.
Right. Maybe not quite that bad, but there might be a little truth to that. All right. I do have a question because you said that you were a musical theater nerd. Tell us, I know this is totally off topic, but you must be like thrilled about Wicked.
Like when I tell you, Wicked was my first intro into musical theater. So my friend, her name was Keisha. We were in high school. I was in 10th grade and we were friends just through class. And she was a musical theater kid. And she was like, you should come hang out with us and like see if like you want to do stuff. And I'm like, okay, because I sing, like I love singing, but again, very mediocre. The thing about being a Capricorn is you are a realist. I am a pretty decent singer. I'm a pretty decent dancer, and I'm a trash actress. So like I can do it, but I'm not the best. In theater class, like I was like, oh my God, I really do like this. This is really fun for me. And Keisha introduced me to Wicked. I remember having my little pink iPod mini and downloading Wicked onto it. And so for the longest time, Idina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth have always been my Elphaba and Galenda. And then I got to see it maybe like 2017, but it was a bad experience because I was sitting literally at the second to top row. And if you've seen Wicked on Broadway, it's a humongous like amphitheater, but you like if you're not in the front, you can't hear anything. I was going off vibes. Same thing with Hamilton. The first time I saw it, I was in the back row, couldn't understand, couldn't make out anything. Second time I saw it, I was in the 4th row. And then I was like, okay, I can get everything now.
Huge difference.
And even when Disney Plus did it, like you could really get the full story and all the details. So yeah, like Wicked, I cried. First
me too. I
cried. I've seen it twice. The Oz does scene really like tears me up inside. Cynthia Erivo, I know that depending on who you are, she gets on some people's nerves. I will say
I love her.
She's got a couple things where I'm like, ooh, I wouldn't say that, but she's she's a star. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. She's a star.
Yeah.
And if she doesn't get that EGOT, I'm gonna be upset. Like
Yeah.
the fact that, and I know, whatever, you don't know, or Amelia Perez, trash. That should not have won over Wicked, period. Like, period. They shouldn't have. They're live singing. She is doing stunts while singing. Like, she's doing all those like flips and all that other stuff.
I know, it's amazing.
Wow.
She is a beast. And Ariana Grande, who I had a little bit of bias over, because I'm like, I know she can flat out sing. Like, she's a
She
great
can
singer.
sing.
I was not in the realm when she was like doing Nickelodeon shows. I was too old
Yeah.
for that. But
same.
right. I knew she could act. So I like knew she had that background, but like I'm such a purist. So I'm like, Kristen Chenoweth is my girl. Like, I don't know if you can Kristen Chenoweth your way through that. And she sure showed us, because she really hit that.
She nailed it.
She was
She nailed it.
dedicated. She did beautifully.
I couldn't keep my eyes off of her. I was like, this is, I was flabbergasted.
The choices
so
that
good.
she made were so smart. Even like, did they have brains or knowledge? Don't make me laugh. They were popular. Right. Like, I'm like, that was genius, because it wasn't a carbon copy of Kristen Chenoweth, who she loves and adores. She really made it her own. And same thing with Elphaba. I think even the fact that Elphaba is a Black woman, like there had never been a Black Elphaba on Broadway. And I'm like,
and people are not happy about it.
No,
she brought it up to another notch. It made it even more important.
Right. It really made it really showed like just
we're talking about Wicked.
I know, it just made more sense. It made more sense. And just like I thought Cynthia Erivo brought just such a different perspective to that character that it really just made me happy. And I cannot believe they're making us wait a year and whatever.
I know.
I know.
Because I would have gladly watched a 5-hour movie.
Me too.
Oh, yeah. I mean, watching those two, absolutely.
Yeah, you didn't have to cut it. I could have watched the 5 hours. I would have stayed there the whole time. So yeah, I'm very happy with Wicked. It was better than what I dreamed it could be.
Me too.
I didn't think they could really pull that off, and John Chu exceeded my expectations. Like, he really is going to be like the Steven Spielberg of our like time, and it's just nice to be witnessing all these like, and he's like a minority, so I'm always really excited like when people who like particularly marginalized groups who don't get like a point of view get to do that. So I felt like John Chu just made some really good decisions. I mean, even Michelle Yeoh as Madame Horrible, like when she does that, listen up, I was like, oh my god, she's amazing. Oh my goodness, like everybody was perfect, everything was perfect, no notes, 10 out of 10, would recommend, can't wait for part 2. We can make this a Wicked. If y'all want to bring me back and we can just do all Wicked, I'm cool.
Heck yeah.
I'm fine with that.
Wow. I think I need to see the movie again.
Me too.
Just so I can talk to you guys more about it, because there's stuff that I think I didn't catch, because
there's so much you can't catch it all.
But it was so good. It was so good. Yep. And I was going back and forth about, oh, should I see it on the big screen? Oh, it's going to be streaming on I'll just see it, whatever. But then I was like, no.
What did your friend say?
You told me, Jennifer, go see it on the big screen. And I have to say, because she may listen to this, my friend Janice also told me to go see it on the big screen. And
thank you, Janice.
And I argued with her, so I was wrong. I'm admitting it right now. But I went and saw it on the big screen, and y'all, I was blown away.
Yep. So let me already watch it for a 5th time, and we can come talk about it.
There you go. Awesome.
All right. Let me get us back on track, since I did that terrible thing. That was my fault. But when you're in the musical theater, you got to talk about it.
Oh yeah.
Tell us about media bias.
Ooh, okay. From a viewer's perspective, or like
from your perspective as someone in the, what do you call it, in the media?
Yeah. Well, and if you want to like parse it down even more, as a Black woman in media.
Right on.
Yeah, that's a whole different ball game. I would say being in media, and I'm a media nerd. I feel like, I don't know about you guys, but I really am passionate about what I do. Like the news informs so much. It really can change people's lives if done correctly. So I am such a nerd, and I like get as much knowledge about certain companies, the way things are done, yada, 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 yada. At the end of the day, the people in the newsrooms are people who live in your community. I only know from a local news perspective. I can't talk from like a national media perspective because I've never worked for them. And I personally have a bias that I believe local news is 10 times better than mainstream media because we're the ones on the ground. So like when things go wrong in your town, who better to know what they're talking about and nuance and ask the hard questions than the people who live right alongside you versus like some national person who's never been to your town before. We are the people who live in your city. Like we care just as much about the taxes and the schools and the, you know, water situation and the droughts and all that stuff. We care just as much as you do. Although in news we are supposed to be as unbiased as possible, nobody can be unbiased. There's no such thing as unbiased or objectiveness because your life experiences essentially give way to like how you see things. So like, yes, me being a Black girl, I see things in a completely different light than like some of my 40-year-old white male counterparts. Like you just do. And that's not a bad thing. It's just something that we all have to consider as we are talking about stories and like the point of view that we want to take and the solutions that we want to look at. Because what might be a solution for you might not work for the next person. And we have to kind of consider all that when we're talking through these stories. I do think that depending on what news you watch, there is a bias to it. There's gonna be a slant. It depends on who's doing it because not everyone is an ethical journalist and not everyone can separate their biases from the story that they're doing. I think that comes with like research. I know there's this lovely little graphic that shows like which media is like more right leaning and more left leaning. And I would say it's on par to a certain degree. But like, for example, like, you know, MSNBC is left leaning like that's full stop. Same thing with Fox. Fox is a very conservative network, and there are networks even more conservative than Fox is. So yeah, I know. So like OAN, Newsmax, like they're even farther right than Fox at times. So it helps when you watch and you're like, I know what I'm looking at. So I know if I'm watching a Rachel Maddow clip, I know that this is going to have a bias that leans to the left. So I need to take that with a grain of salt because although she might be using certain numbers or certain verbiage or whatever, I'm like, yeah, that is true. But like you might be using like the more liberal side of that number versus the more conservative side. Like, for example, I know this happened like a lot with like Kamala Harris. When she would say certain like stats, people would go, yeah, like that's the truth, but that's the higher number of the stat. So she's not lying. She's just using this number to her advantage. So I think when you are an informed viewer and you know that, you're like, okay, I know what I'm watching. I know what they're saying, but I can also Google like myself and see if I can find those things that like match up with that. When I'm looking at like media bias, do I think that some people do it on purpose? Absolutely. There are some media outlets that this is their angle and this is what they're going to tell stories from this angle.
Fox News.
And they do. They have a very conservative viewpoint. And I always tell people with Fox, you need to be cautious because I akin it to talk radio and television. Is talk radio necessarily news? No, it's a bunch of opinions. And
but the same could be said for MSNBC. What's that when you watch
MSNBC?
Yeah, the same could be said of that one.
It's talking heads. It's talking heads who are using their, like, if you go look up some of the people who work for Fox News, they do not have journalism degrees. They have poli-sci degrees. And they have a bias toward the GOP. And so they are using what they know about politics and their belief system and meshing that into one thing. Then one news show that they had was Shepard Smith, who I love. He is a fantastic journalist, but they put him on at 3:00 or like whenever. He doesn't work for the network anymore, but they were putting him on at some obscure time where nobody's watching. And he would flat out contradict his colleagues. He would say like, no, like they're saying this, that's not true. This is what's happening, yada, yada, yada. And it is a news show. It's not him being biased. It's a news show. The rest of the shows like Fox and Friends and the Jesse Waters and all these, they're talking heads. They're not news people. They have an opinion and they have a point of view and they are going to push that point of view and figure out what works for their point of view to persuade the viewer, essentially. And that is why Fox is the #1 television network in America. Because it essentially is an echo chamber for a lot of people. It confirms a lot of biases, and even when it's not on par with the truth, people want to take it as the truth because it aligns with their belief systems. And that's the thing about being a good news consumer. There should be stories that challenge your point of view. like on certain topics. And even if you're like, hey, I still hold fast to my belief, but that is an excellent point. That's when you know
Right.
you're a better news consumer. And of course,
Okay.
there are people and news folks who flat out lie. Again, going back to the Fox example, they had an entire lawsuit against them
Right. Right.
for a lie, and it cost them dearly, millions of dollars. And they're actually up against another lawsuit with a different voting machine company.
Right. Dominion.
So Dominion is the one they lost to.
Okay.
I think it's some smart. I can't remember, but they have another lawsuit coming up that
Okay.
they're going to either have to take to court or settle. But I think I'm very happy that those people decided to sue them, because it shows that you cannot just go out here and spew whatever you want and call it news. You just
Right.
can't. Most journalists have some type of legal team, particular stories have to be checked. Like, we can't
Right.
just throw it out. And if you are wrong, if you put something out and like you didn't do your due diligence to like vet it, we're in trouble. Like, we could get suspended, we could get fired. You can't just say things. And so I think Fox News, and particularly some of the talking heads, have really pushed the line on like what is opinion and what is a lie, and what they're purporting as truth. And I think that lawsuit really put things into perspective for them, that you can't just go saying stuff just because you truly believe it if it's not true. So
Okay. So is there like a code of ethics or a code of professional conduct that journalists have to adhere to?
so first of all, the FCC license all of us. So
Okay.
you cannot operate a news organization without the FCC licensing.
Okay.
But everybody has their own ethics system, I guess. Of course, you go to school and you learn like what not to do, what to do, blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, when you're at certain shops, they might have their own ethics. Like, for example, if we have a source that tells us the mayor is in danger of getting impeached and here's why, we need to hear that probably from two more people before we go on air with it. But everyone has
Okay.
their different litmus tests of like how they would like to vet or confirm information before they go on air with it. Secondly, there are watchdog groups like Columbia Journalism Review, I believe, and then Pointer, Poynter, the AP. They're a nonprofit newsroom, and they put out like guidance. So like there's an AP
Okay.
style guide that talks about like words to use and like how to say this and how to write this and blah, blah, blah. Pointer might put out certain coverage rules for covering suicide. There's a way
Okay.
that we're supposed to cover that, and it's in best practices.
Okay.
To be hip to that, you have to follow those things and also be willing to learn. One thing I learned, for example, and I'm really doing my best to try to shake it because it's such a common phrase, is saying pipeline. I cannot remember their exact initials, but it's the Native American Association of Journalists. Pipeline is a derogatory term for them, and they don't like to use it. And so I'm
Oh,
like,
I didn't know that.
exactly. And you wouldn't like nobody like there's no, grand poobah that is spouting out all these journalism ethics things. You have to be in tune with those
Right.
people. And I care to report accurately on certain demographics. So I look to the Asian American Journalism Association when certain things pop up. There was even a journalism organization who I can't remember what the crime was. It was like a mass shooting, I believe, and it was like the Sikh, and by that I say SIKH, like the religious.
Sikh. Yeah.
Yeah. There something had happened within their community, and like they put out guidelines on how to report on it. And so
Wow.
I'm gonna
Oh,
go with
that's
what
cool.
the community say versus like whatever copy that we get from CNN or the AP or even like by my own writing. Like I want to go by what's correct. Not everyone has that want, not everyone has that care, not everyone has that wherewithal to like go outside of your job and take a little extra time and figure out like what's the best way to do this. So yeah, there even the way we describe child sex assault. We don't like to use the word kiddie porn because it puts the responsibility on the child rather than the
Right.
abuser. It's better to call it child sexual assault material or child sexual abuse material, one or the other, instead of kiddie porn. It
Okay.
trivializes the crime and it puts the child as the problem rather than the abuser. So
Got it.
That's
even things
awesome.
like that are things that you've heard kiddie porn
Yeah.
for years. But
Yeah.
now we're saying like that's not appropriate. We shouldn't say that anymore.
You
So
know,
Thank
that
goodness.
yeah, and that goes to show how ethical you are, how dedicated you are to your craft, and how good you are at what you do, that you are taking the time to continue to educate yourself about
Yes.
all of this. So
Yeah.
kudos to you.
And not everyone does that. I care because I care about the communities I serve, and I never want to be looked at as like, oh, she's so like tone deaf. Like, why would she say that? Or like,
Right.
why doesn't she know this? Because I'm not an infinite, all-knowing being. I'm not.
Yeah.
I have to read everything and put it in my brain and then execute it. So if someone's like, hey, we don't say that anymore. Like, this isn't correct. This is correct. Then I'm gonna go, oh, totally my fault. I'll get that changed immediately. And so,
Mhm.
like, if I can, I will go retrack my story. Like, if I'm speaking over video, or I'll go rewrite it in my web script, like, I'll fix it. Like, I don't really believe in just like writing people out. Be like, I'm not saying that because I don't care. I should
Mhm.
care. Again, not everyone's built like that, and not everyone does that. So,
Right.
Now, you said when you were describing all that, that sometimes a place like CNN will send you copy.
mhm.
Is that the reason why years ago we saw those clips where all the local stations at the same time were saying the same thing?
Yep.
Mhm.
So most stations that you watch local are CNN affiliates. So like you have the ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, and like the CW sometimes, and those all have news stations. And so you may be tied to a station group like EW Scripps, the same people who put on the spelling bee, Nexstar, Gray. There's like some family owned ones like in Florida, like called like Sunbeam. Everyone has like a sister station. And so like, for
Mhm.
example, I worked for EW Scripps. When it comes to like sharing, we're probably going to go through our sister station first. So even though our sister station in, let's say, Denver is an NBC station, they're still owned under Scripps. So we can share, but they wouldn't share with like Nexstar. That would,
Okay.
and the way that that would work is if both of them are ABC affiliates, it's probably going to get swooped up into the ABC like news pipeline because that's who our affiliate is, and then they can share that way. But you normally share with your station group, then your parent company, like affiliate. And then, of course, even those affiliates have owned and operated. So, like the Fox 5 in Atlanta is owned and operated. The CBS in Miami is owned and operated. So, like by CBS proper. So then they have their own set of verbiage and like how they're passing stories around. And then CNN, which is a overarching, most of us have to pay for a relationship with CNN. And
Mhm.
so all these people and things have essentially service wires. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
You go on, you like log on a website and it gives you all the video and the copy with it. Now,
Mhm.
as a news anchor like myself, I'm going to change the copy. I'm not going to, unless it is just so terminology heavy that I'm like, I don't want to change this because I might change the intended meaning of the script. I'm going to leave it alone. But for the most part, like if it's something pretty basic, I'm going to change it to fit my speaking style and what I deem that would come best out of my mouth. Not everyone does that. So that's how people end up reading the same scripts because they don't try to personalize the copy.
Are
So
those scripts ever pushed down and they're mandatory and all news stations have to say it exact? Is it like required at any time?
no, I would say the only time like you have to like say something is if it's like a legal term or like a certain, like for example, I was here when Damar Hamlin went down with like into cardiac arrest
Mhm.
when he was like in a coma. That happened in
Mhm.
Cincinnati. People were saying heart attack and cardiac arrest, and those aren't the same things. So like
Right.
things like that, like of course you're like, I'm just stick to the script because I thought again, I'm just a reporter. I'm not a medical personnel. So I was saying like, oh, it's a heart attack. And they're like, no, 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 that's not the same thing. Cardiac arrest and heart attack's not the
Uh,
same. So
okay.
Okay.
yeah, certain things like that. But I'm sure that there might be companies who have mandatory must runs or things like that. Within like the last place I worked at, we didn't have those types of things. If they were mandatory, it was because it was like a sponsorship or like a charity thing that we all had to put in our show because we're doing stuff for literacy, or we did this like one charity thing for to get kids beds, like those going all the
Mhm.
shows, and you have to run it. But normally they're for a good cause. They're not like
Oh, that's
propaganda,
good.
if that makes any sense.
Okay. And
Propaganda.
I'm glad that you said that last part, because as you were talking about it, Jasmine, about these are owned by this and this is owned by this, it it's getting dangerously close to the news is owned by one organization.
Yep, it's a
You know, it's
monopoly.
getting very, very, yeah, it's getting very, very close to being a monopoly. And that is
Yeah,
very frightening.
it is scary. And so I'll show you how like that's already like affecting some of the local news stations. And has been, this isn't anything new. So the FCC has a rule that you can only have a certain amount of what they call penetration of markets. So in all, there's over 200 markets. Every city is a market. Your top market is like New York, LA, Chicago, Philly, Houston, Dallas. Those are kind of like the bigger markets. The bottom market is like Butte, Montana, or like wherever, tiny, tiny markets. It's all based on how many TVs are in the market. Each of those, normally each city probably has a Fox, an ABC, a CBS, and an NBC. That's pretty normal. But like I worked in a place called Beaumont, Texas, tiny town, about an hour and a half, less than that, east of Houston and closer to the Louisiana border. We in that town had what are called duopolies, where it's two stations smushed together. And so I was a part of KFDM and KBTV, which is a Fox and CBS affiliate smashed together. And then the other station was another affiliate, and they were the NBC ABC. I can't remember. I think that's right. NBC ABC affiliate. Sinclair owned one, the one I went to, and Tegna owned the other. So even though there are four stations, you are only technically getting your news from two companies. Depending on what kind of, and because here's the thing, everyone has an agenda. As much as we would like to be unbiased, everyone has an agenda. Everyone has a way that they cover things. Everyone has like a let's stay away from this, let's do more of this type of thing. That no matter what. But depending on what those agendas are between those two companies, dictates what you're watching. And so you could say, oh, I hate CBS. They, I hate their propaganda. I'm going to watch Fox. It's the same channel. It's the same.
Right.
I'm on both airwaves. The reporters are the same people. So you're not getting anything different by having those things. And again, you're taking what you could watch by, you might have four different companies. Now you've mushed them into two.
So where can
with the Trump administration coming in, that could get worse because the Trump administration is really into deregulating things. There was actually a news article, I want to say in Variety, where so many of these station group CEOs were wildly excited to get him in office so that they could slash the cap, the penetration cap.
What's that mean? Okay.
So essentially, I can't remember the exact number and I don't want to like lie to you, but say it's 30%. You cannot penetrate more than 30% of the 200 plus markets.
Right.
If you take that away, then that means anybody can have anything. And then that means that you are, again, diminishing the type of news that you are getting and the people who are giving it to you. And
right. So you're diminishing the diversity and the variety of the news and the viewpoints. And the competition. Yeah.
Right. So if two station groups are owned or two, stations are owned by the same person, you're getting the same news. You're getting whatever they deem is best for you to get. And that's the great thing with a variety of people working in different groups. You have different franchise. So if you like have a franchise where it's like we have a guy, his name's John Matarese, who's like a consumer reporter. And so his like, or if you have like a Money Matters or like in education, those are franchises. Not everyone's going to do that same franchise. Not everyone has the same ethics. Not everyone has the same what's the word, like access to certain like stories.
Yeah.
If you have the same people working in those same buildings, you might miss out on certain stories because they don't want to do it. It doesn't fit their brand. It doesn't fit what they want to talk about. It doesn't fit the agenda. So now you're kind of depriving people from their variety of news sources because it's all being compacted into one big monopoly.
That segues quite nicely into maybe my next two questions. The first one, if we are concerned about this, and I hope everybody listening is concerned about this, where do we go for accurate, unbiased, diverse news?
So I think the best unbiased news sources, I have three for you. NPR, National Public Radio, and most cities have their own NPR station, whether that be TV or radio. You can go to the big NPR, which is national, or you could go down to your local NPR, which is, I think, some of the best news that you'll get, and it's split right down the middle. The AP, the Associated Press, they are a nonprofit newsroom, technically. They are the golden rule. Like most of the time, if you ever like are reading something and it'll say like New York AP, like that's
Right.
the AP. So a lot of news that we end up getting from like wires and stuff tends to be the AP, and it's very accurate. They are great journalists. They are worldwide, and they don't have a slant to their news. And
Okay,
then
good.
the last one I would tell you is BBC, which is
Okay.
over in the UK. The BBC does a great job of just cutting clean down the middle and not really, you know,
That
kind
makes
of,
sense.
Yeah,
yeah,
because I mean they don't have a dog in this fight.
they
So
really
That makes
don't. And
sense.
so that's
yeah.
what makes it even more fun, because I love reading like how other national, like your countries like kind of view America and the shenanigans that go on over here. So
It's very interesting. It's
Yeah, it
yeah,
is.
very
It
interesting.
it
is.
is. So yeah, I those are my top three.
Okay.
And then if you're really into like deep dives and great investigative journalism, ProPublica.
Okay.
ProPublica. They are also a nonprofit newsroom, and
Mhm.
they are doing fantastic work.
Okay.
They cover any and everything from water crises to what's happening with these new abortion laws and bans to domestic. I mean, they cover
Okay.
the gamut in their long reads. And so, if you're
Right.
looking for fantastic investigative journalism, ProPublica or ProPublica, depending on how you say it, is one of the best, hands down.
What about Mother Jones? I used to have a subscription to Mother Jones a million years ago, probably back when I lived in Minnesota and was in law school. But I really miss what, at least at that point, seemed to be fairly unbiased
Mhm.
and long form journalism. But what about them?
I would say more recently they're leaning more to the left.
Are they okay?
Now, how hard, I don't know, because again, when I am reading articles, like the immediate thing I go look at is who are they writing for, because
Got it.
that will make me go, I should probably take this with a grain of salt. Like
Got it.
it might be true, it might have validity, but it's definitely going to be written at a slant. Same thing, the Drudge Report. They
Mhm.
are very right leaning. Like, so if
Mhm.
I'm reading anything from the Drudge Report, I'm keeping that in mind as I am reading everything.
What about like Time and Newsweek?
I would say like Newsweek is pretty decent. But even like with Jeff Bezos owning
Oh,
is he the Post now?
Washington Post. Yeah.
Yeah, even that's getting a little
Oh,
slippery. And Washington Post used to be one of the best, to me, one of the
yeah.
best newspapers in America, along with like the Boston Globe and, of course, like the New York Times and things like that. Like those are these really prestigious news organizations, but they've been starting to have a couple cracks in the armor. And I'm sure you've seen like some of the journalists and like the political cartoonists at WAPO are leaving, like because they're like
Wow.
they're squishing they're essentially squashing our story ideas, what we want to do, all those things, because it leans too left for them, and because we know that Jeff Bezos is a fan of Donald Trump, and what the GOP.
Fan of, afraid of, whatever.
So he's not going to want anything published about his friend. And what
Okay.
makes that awful is that Amazon has problems all on its own, and he could be squashing stories about Amazon.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
That we'll never really find out because he has the power to do so, because
Right.
Yep.
he holds the purse strings.
Right. So that leads to, thank you. Thank you for setting up that segue so nicely for me. So we saw this in 2016 and we saw it again in 2024 with when Trump won, that there were all these sort of like Monday morning quarterbacking kind of thing of, oh, the media is doing this wrong as far as covering Trump, and we should do it differently, and we should do this instead of that, and blah, blah, blah. And it seems like the lesson wasn't learned. Can you speak to that a little bit about specifically what media is doing wrong as far as covering Trump, and maybe some ideas about what media can do and should do to cover him in a more accurate way?
So like the media report heard around the world was when Donald Trump was coming down that escalator to
Mhm.
announce that he was going to run for president. America is the most unserious like nation of people in the world, and so we're like, yeah, reality star.
That
But
was me.
I
Mhm. Mhm.
guarantee this is
Same.
probably how they felt about Ronald Reagan, who was literally a Hollywood star. Like it was like,
Yep,
Sure.
I did.
why is
Yep.
why in the heck would you run for president? And why in the heck would we ever vote for you? And so I think
Heritage Foundation.
I mean, I think the media really underestimated him and thought that like this is a joke. This is silly. They essentially put him in like the same category as like a Ross Perot or what's that poet lady who always be running for president?
Marianne
Marianne
Williamson. Yeah.
Those types of people. So I really don't think they took him very seriously.
Right. I didn't. I told my kids,
I
no
neither.
way. It's never gonna
I don't
happen.
think people didn't think he was gonna. It was like, yeah, you can run, but you're not gonna get the nom. And then he got the nom. And then it was like, oh, okay, this is literally, essentially, this was, and I know we're all sick of this word, but it was the most unprecedented run for president that the media had ever seen. And not only do you have the media who are trying to work through whatever they're working with, you got social media who is stoking the fires of misinformation and disinformation, not only at home, but abroad with Russian bot farms who are, you know, trying to trick the American people. So it was like a cluster, and it's this perfect cluster storm for Donald Trump to get into power. And I think the media did a bad job of trying to be too objective. Because I think once they said, okay, he's really here, like he's gonna run for president and he has a good shot of winning, I think by then it was too late. Here's the problem. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what the media says if the people are eating it up. And you would think that things like sexual assault or even like saying, because again, he was technically found liable for sexual assault, but he, even when he was saying the whole thing with him getting caught with it by the extra cameras by saying that he would grab women by their genitals, those things would horrify most people. But when like the media was putting so much on it and like the people just weren't responding, like that wasn't enough for them to not put their trust in him. And I think I have seen great media work done by outlets and individuals who laid out the law of the land and told you exactly what was going to happen when Donald Trump was elected as president. And there were some, depending on what side of the aisle, there was some good and some bad with that. Everything that he wanted to do had a major consequence, again, whether you see that as good or bad. And those were explained to people. Do people listen is the question. No.
Yeah.
And are people swayed by misinformation and disinformation? Yes.
Absolutely.
Are people in echo chambers? Yes. And
absolutely.
So, even like with this new run that we're seeing with him about to ascend to the presidency again, some of the things he's saying, it's like, oh, y'all, we told you this was going to happen. I think what the GOP has done is that they are great at branding. They are wonderful at calling something and making it stick. So for example, I think the best example of that is Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act.
Yep.
There are multiple people who hate Obamacare, but are on Obamacare. They just know it's the Affordable Care Act. And so when they're saying that they want to get rid of that and dismantle that, that includes your policy. But they don't understand that because they are in their own echo chamber and it has been branded as Obamacare. And so when that is happening, they're like, oh yeah, get rid of Obamacare. We hate that. Babes, you're on Obamacare. I think that's like the kind of thing is that that certain people are not well versed through everything. The great thing about being a news person is that I feel pretty well versed in a lot and that I hear both sides because I have to talk to these people. I have to like listen and constantly like absorb what these people are saying. And so I know that the Affordable Care Act and Obamacare is the same thing, but not every citizen knows that. Actually, it's the media's fault for not calling it what it is. You should say like Affordable Care Act, also known to some circles as Obamacare, is in danger of being cut. Like we can't just sometimes say the right word because it doesn't. I think that we really
you need to make the connection for people.
I think there's a fine balance of babying your audience or like demeaning them or patronizing them and informing them fully. It's a very fine line because we don't want to say, hi, you stupid person. I know you don't understand what we're saying, but this because that's not going to do anything. And we know that our viewers are smart. Like there are some people who, you know, they got two brain cells fighting for third, but there are some people who are very smart. And so we can't talk to them that way. And I think like I've seen this on social media, and honestly, I think this is the best take. But this is definitely the mess around and find out portion of the America sitcom, because I think people are so misinformed that what's being said sounds great, but we're not getting into the domino effect of the things that will be affected. For example, mass deportation. I love hearing people talk about mass deportation because of the sheer
People don't get it.
the sheer number. First of all, it's being inflated. There's not that many people who have entered the United States illegally. There's not that many people. But this is going to cost a gang of money, billions of dollars to do this. This is going to cause a massive failure of the agricultural system.
Yep.
I'm from Florida. Construction. And we saw that happen a little bit when Florida decided to, I can't even remember what the law was called, but essentially that they were punishing people. Like if you were knowingly hiring and harboring people who had entered the United States illegally, like you would be in trouble, and how the construction sites were deserted for months because of just the fear that even maybe if they were legally here, that they would be lumped in with everybody else. That caused a stoppage of work. Things got put behind schedule, openings, all type of housing, all types of stuff. So I'm like, I hear you. I do think that there should be a better pathway to citizenship. I think that there needs to be a better way to, essentially gather people at the border, but not put them in jail. Like there's got to be a better way to do this. But I know for a fact that this way is going to cause a lot of harm that's not everyone is thinking of, because the goal is to get rid of all the illegals. Again, that's not even the right terminology, because people aren't illegal, actions are. So,
but only the brown and black ones.
But even still, now that's been a cause of questioning because of the Twitter fight, and I'm not going to call it the Twitter.
The H-1B visas.
Yeah, with Vivek Ramaswamy saying like, Americans are dumb and we need to start prioritizing smart people. And people were like, you shut up, you brown nerd. And then Elon Musk, who a lot of people deify because he is a rich man, are like, he's kind of right. Like, y'all are very freaking stupid and we need people to come here to outsmart y'all. And then people are like, huh? Like, I thought you were on our side. Like, it's kind of weird, because I thought by now the infighting would have ceased between the Republican Party, but it seems like it's getting a little bit more
it's ramping up,
particularly with people in power. Elon Musk and Vivek and
this is going to go crazy.
It's all kind of like coming to a head, and I think it's because, again, everyone has the same goal in mind, but the way that they want to enact that goal does not necessarily align. And we saw it with the debate when he said, like, I have concepts of a plan. It's a very vague kind of overarching, like, we want to detain and get rid of every illegal immigrant. For people who love that idea, that sounds great on its face. But when you start talking about the nitty gritty of it, that's when we're going to start running into problems, because not everyone's going to have the same way of wanting to deal with that. And so I think that is going to be a major plot point that we will see within this administration, is the actual exercising of what they want to get done, and if that can get done.
That shows part of the problem, I think, that maybe people have with media, is that, or with anything, that there's the nuanced conversation is not happening. I mean, there isn't time, because the news stories are 30 seconds, 3 minutes, whatever. That's 30. Not enough time to get into all of or in any nuances of a policy, an idea, a law. I mean, there's no time to get into that.
Raquel,
so then people don't know.
But people are watching TikTok. They want 30-second blips. And
I'd be speeding through on 2 times, even as someone who is a lover of news and TikTok. They want it fast and they want it quick. And that's the problem. Good journalism takes a long time. One of the best examples I have of journalism is a great podcast called In the Dark. And the most recent one had to do with a guy who had been tried 7 times by a DA who had been caught using racist tactics to taint the jury pool. essentially pinned this guy to a crime that he more than likely did not do, and was held in jail for 20 years because of it. And the girls who reported on that ended up moving to Mississippi to do their reporting. They're from New York. Moved to Mississippi for an entire summer to do that reporting. No, you can't do that in a minute 30. Those podcasts are 12 episodes and they're an hour long. And that's just the shortened version. So I guess that's the other thing about the media machine, is that mainstream media like a CNN has commodified the 24-hour news cycle. There are more news shows, but not necessarily better content.
And or even more content. I mean, you can watch, and I've done this, you can watch like a whole day of news shows and you hear the same three stories over and over and over.
Right. And I personally believe that there's too much news like on television, because what I would rather have like a solid 5 shows of news with great journalism in them, rather than like if you in your local town, if you have a Fox affiliate, they don't have like a morning show to give them a break. So they are literally on from 4:30 a.m. to like 11 a.m. like all morning. There's not enough news in the world that you can find that quickly. And that a journalist who is on a story of that time, first of all, you can't get any quotes or anything from anybody at 4 a.m. You don't have time to put together a good story. Some people are tired of like politics. I think they really are. But the problem is you may be tired of politics, but politics ain't tired of you. And politics are going to keep on mowing you over whether you know it or not. I wish that more people would take their role in politics seriously by being informed voters and really getting to the nitty gritty. Like, I know before I go vote, I go read the newspaper so I can read every amendment and understand it, because it's in legal jargon. I don't know what the heck any of that means. And sometimes you might be confused. You might think you need to vote yes at the way this reads, but actually the way it reads, you should say no, if that's what you're doing. I make it my mission to go through the newspapers, which I think are normally pretty unbiased, read what they have to say, read their opinions. I go look for myself and I go, okay, I need to mark down my play ballot so that I can go in there and like, I know what I'm talking about. I voted in every election I could since I was 18 years old. And I've moved to 4 different states and I voted in every single one of them. Like, I don't play about my vote, but that's because I take it really seriously. Not everyone takes it seriously.
That's true.
Yeah.
The media is a component of learning about politics and of being an informed voter, but it's not the end all be all. And I think people, and I know that like I'm a TikTok fiend, like all I am is on TikTok, and they talk about this a lot about like men who have like, what's it called, something incompetence, I can't remember, and so like they will essentially be like, oh, I can't do this, like I don't know how to do this, and then they're just do it for them. Weaponized incompetence.
Yes, weaponized
incompetence. So they'll be trying to make pancakes and they'll be like, oh, like
I can't do
what that means. Like,
oh,
like, where's the pan? They're hoping that they ask you so many questions that you'll just say, screw it, I'll do it myself. And so I think that's what some people are expecting the media to do, is that they have so many questions, and some of them are valid and some of them are just snarky, but they have so many questions that they're just hoping that you'll say either, forget about it, or fine, let me just break this down for you. And at the end of the day, there's not enough time for us to break this down for you. You need to do that on your own. You need to take your own political destiny in your hands and do some research. At this day and age, like, again, I'm a millennial. I literally straddled the life of no technology and the life of technology in 0.00002 seconds. So I am of the age of Britannica, and I'm also of the age of Google. And I am annoyed that people just can't Google certain things. You'd be shocked to know what people call the news stations for, like to ask questions, like they don't have Google at home or on their phone. So I think that a lot of people just need to start taking it into their own hands and just read for yourself, become aware of the media that you're consuming. Who is in charge of this media? Who is this person that's giving me this news? The person that they're reporting on is a company that their dad owns. That's a conflict of interest. Why would I listen to anything they have to say about that? Because they have ulterior motives, probably. Like, that's not a good thing. And you kind of have to do your own like diagramming on like how you're going to get your news and what you need to like make the decisions that you need to make for your family, for either their safety, their prosperity, all those types of things. The news is not the alpha and the omega. We're just not. And even the great news that is out there, some of it's behind a paywall, is too long and people don't want to read it. Like I said, it will take you a smooth 30 minutes to read. Does everybody have that type of time, or do they want to read? No. So you have to really figure out what your go-to sources are going to be and who you trust and who can explain it to you and break it down to you in a way that is sufficient. And like I said, I think some of the best political reporting I get is from NPR. They have an entire politics podcast where they go over everything that day. They come out with one every day and kind of go through what you need to know in one of the most professional ways I've ever seen.
And Jennifer, you and I have talked about this before. It's upon us as individual citizens to be informed about what's going on in our communities. But like we've also said, that takes time.
It does.
You got to figure out what your news is, but that takes research. So like I said, make sure you're not reading an opinion article. Make sure, like I said, if you're going to read from like the Daily Beast or New York Post, like they're terrible. It's literally like TMZ on steroids. So like there's certain things, like I do read TMZ, but I'm going to read TMZ. I believe in TMZ for deaths that like,
but it's entertainment.
Deaths, they are the number one go-to source. If they tell you someone's dead, I will 99.9% believe them. But will I go to them for breaking down a lawsuit about Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni? No.
Oh, another one of our favorite topics.
I'm gonna go and like listen to a lawyer. Like there's literally an entire like law and crime channel, Court TV. And those people are legit lawyers, like who just do television. So like that's where I'm gonna go for my sourcing on that. It's just really about deciding and like who is your holy grail for this and who I wouldn't spit on if they were on fire and told me that, the apocalypse was coming. Like I said, certain like Breitbart. Like I'm not listening to a word Breitbart says. Same thing with Alex Jones. Like info, I'm not listening to a word that man says. There's no truth in that. Unfortunately, there are certain media outlets like those that are trash, and you should not take anything they say for the truth because there's not an ounce of it in there. People just really need to do their due diligence and research who these journalists are. Google them, see what they've been about, see if they've gotten in trouble before, see if they've plagiarized. Like you want to go know all these things about who you're getting your news from. You should be vetting them just like you would vet like somebody who is babysitting your child. Because they're giving you information that you are basing your life decisions on. You should be in tune with who they are and what they do and if they slant any kind of way.
Well, I'm really sad because we're out of time. And I have to tell you that this is one of my most favorite interviews that we've ever done.
We could talk to you for
all day long. And
I feel like y'all are my besties now. So
and I have so many more questions. I wanted to talk about I see that picture of you and your fiance in the background. And I wanted to talk about that because that's an interesting topic.
We could talk all day.
Yeah, we could break this into 5 parts. So we have the wicked part, the fiance part, the news part, all types of stuff. But like
all kinds.
Clearly, I had enjoyed my time with you, lovely ladies. So if there's any time that I can come back and yap some more, I have no problem doing that.
You have an open invitation.
Because there's a lot still to talk about. There are a lot of organizations.
I'm sorry. I
love it. It's so great.
No, this is awesome.
I also think you gave a lot of information that our audience can utilize.
I hope so.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But was there anything that you wanted to say that we didn't give you a chance to?
First of all, that is a total move out of a news reporter book, and that is fantastic that you asked that question because that always is a great wrap-up question. But
thank you.
I think it's just although institutions, and they can range from religion to education to journalism, institutions are made to be perfect, but it is the humans who are within them that flaw them. As much as there are all these wonderful edicts for journalism and how to be a better journalist and how to do this and how to do that, there are people who don't care. There are people who are here to sow dissension and who are here to misinform you and disinform you for whatever they got going on. I wish people would respect the news a little bit more. I know that we're not everyone's favorite right now, but I think that there is a time and place for us. If you are a news person that you're like, I've given up on news, I don't believe anything that comes out of those cricket people's mouths, I invite you to at least go watch your local news. Your local news has your best interest at heart because these are your neighbors. And if you don't care about them, again, I would go to an AP, a BBC, or an NPR to get the news and to be a daily and avid consumer of your news. That is like the best thing that I can tell you, because you will find out the more that you start to read or listen to truthful and reliable sources, it will really shape your worldview, and you will be able to pick out, your BS like nobody's business. Like once you have that in you. But it does take, it's like a muscle. It takes, like, if you pray at night or you journal in the morning, maybe make a political podcast your part of your morning. Get in the habit of really like listening to the news from unbiased sources so that you can make the best decisions for your family. Don't give up on news. The people in it, some of us do suck, but there are some of us who really care about the people that we report on and the cities that we report on, and we want to give you the most accurate, up-to-date information to help you and your family. So that would be my one plea for, don't give up on news just yet. You're going to need us, I promise.
And that's a whole word right there, especially with our new president coming into office, because we're going to need somebody to tell us what's going on.
Here's
So
my thing: no president's perfect, and all politicians are skilled orators. And
Yeah.
every president, vice president, congressional person says stuff that don't be true, and you have to sort it out, even if they have the best intentions. So no matter who's in office, you need to pay attention to news and don't take them at their word.
love it.
That's the best advice. That is the best advice ever.
No
Thank
research.
you.
No
Thank
problem.
you so much for being
Yeah.
on today.
Thank you,
Yes.
guys. I really appreciated our time here together. And now I have 2 new besties. So
Yes.
please don't mind if I bother you guys at all points.
Bother us.
All the time. All the time.
Yep,
Bother us
yep.
whenever you want.
Your
Yep.
bother's no bother.
Exactly. You have a spot here whenever you want. If you're just like, hey, I want to talk to Raquel and Jennifer and have an episode, let us know.
All right, done deal. Well, I will quit yapping so that you can outro your show now.
Okay.
Thank you, Jasmine.
Bye. Oh, recap, Raquel?
Okay, so much amazing information to take away from this. One thing that Jasmine said that I'd never given any thought to was vet your local reporters. I've never thought about that before. I've never heard anybody say that before. Never thought about it. I'm gonna do that. I mean, living here in Atlanta and I literally live in the city. I don't live in, the suburbs or whatever, but I see some of our news people just out and about sometimes. Like I'll be walking out of Publix and here's a newscaster, walking in, like getting his groceries. So these are people who are actually in my community. I should know more about these people. And if they're reporting on a fire or, I don't know, a car accident or a parade or a demonstration, I should know who they are. Who is this person telling me the news?
Yeah.
Never thought about that before. I think that's going to be a game changer for me.
Yeah, I agree totally. And I think what really struck me was be a better news consumer.
Yeah.
That really summed everything up. I am one of those people who, in some ways, has kind of given up on the news. And I feel like all the Foxes and the one you listen to, I feel like they're all biased. I've felt this way for a long time. I do listen to NPR when I'm in my car often, but I was even feeling that they were a little bit biased. So it's helpful to hear that maybe they are one of the most unbiased. And I really love the BBC thing, because I have noticed, I don't ever plan it, but if I hop in my car and the BBC is on, the way that they report our news, I'm like, there's the story.
Yeah.
There is the story.
Well, and like I was saying, there like 3 or maybe 5 stories will be reported over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, I'm like, I know there's other stuff going on in not just in politics, but there's more stuff going on in our country. There's more stuff going on in the world. What are we not hearing about? What are we not learning about?
Right. But also, if it's being reported all day long, why not switch channels and listen to how it's been reported? Because I used to have this drive to a boyfriend's house, and I would listen to NPR on the way to his house. And when I got there, he would have Fox News on. Also why we broke up. However, however, I think that's when I got kind of like cranky about the news, because I realized it was the same story with a different slant. And I was like, wait a second, they're telling the same story, but they're not telling the same story.
Right. Right.
And that's what kind of got me cranky about the news. So I think I'm going to go back to NPR, but I think I'm also going to, I like the idea of listening to one podcast a day. I think she told us which one, I don't remember.
NPR.
And then just listening to the recap of the news, so that I don't
Yeah.
have to hear the whole story over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And also, I want everyone to know that Jasmine goes by News Bay, and that her Instagram is fun to follow.
Yes.
It. All the
And her
stuff that-
TikTok.
all the stuff that we didn't get to talk about is on there. There's so much. She's just fascinating and fun and educated and smart.
Right. I mean,
And
she literally is just the whole bag. Smart, funny, great at her job, a concerned citizen of the world.
yeah,
uh,
I'm thoroughly impressed.
yeah.
And she's
who
also
wouldn't be?
gorgeous.
She's
She's gorgeous to boot.
Gorgeous.
Yeah. So
Gorgeous.
I'm really impressed. And I just have a whole new vivra for the news now.
Yeah.
I feel like she's put it back on me. Okay.
That's awesome.
Like, okay, you had
Yeah,
you had your problem, but now it's time to get back in the game.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, and the point that she made about, okay, you might think you're not a politics person, but guess what? Politics is all about you, baby. So
Yep.
you need to pay attention. You can't divorce yourself from politics, because it's all up in there.
We can't afford that.
The political is personal all day, every day.
Yeah.
All day, every day. I love NPR. I've been listening to NPR forever, like since high school. And I've tried to listen to Fox, but it gives me a headache, and it makes my stomach hurt, and it makes my stomach hurt.
Yeah.
So I can't go that far, but I will continue with NPR. I'm making that pledge. I will start listening to BBC, and I'm gonna start paying more attention to Associated Press. In fact, before we came on today to record, I actually downloaded the apps for BBC and AP so that I can have those literally on my phone.
Ready to go.
Ready to go. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think with the way that we're constantly bombarded with information all day long, to just have some go-tos. Just go listen, and then maybe, at least for me, I got to close off from all the noise of the rest of it for a while.
Absolutely. You can have some control over what you're bombarded with and when.
Yeah.
You don't have to be a passive receptacle for information being thrown at you. You can have some control over when you consume things.
And one last final thing I want to say is that I really liked Jasmine's reference to listening to the local news, because I see a tie there to local politics.
Yep.
Because I think for so many years I didn't pay attention to the local politics, and I've realized how important that is. And now hearing this from her, I'm like, oh yeah, I should be paying more attention to the local news, because then I would understand the local politics a little bit better. That's maybe my biggest takeaway, and my commitment is to get reconnected with local news.
And I will say this, because there's a lot of us who've cut the cord and don't have cable, that sort of thing. Check to see if there's a website, because that's another way to do it. I don't have cable, so there's a lot of local news that I don't get, but I can pull up a website. I don't read our local paper anymore, even though the AJC is a pretty big newspaper, but even over the time that I've lived here, it is a shell of what it used to be. It's just been slashed so much,
Yeah.
but there's a website. And so for
Yeah.
people who are like, it's just one more thing that's going to be cluttering up my house to go get a newspaper. No, just look at it on your phone. If you don't have cable, that's fine. Look at it on your phone. There are ways for us to do this. Sometimes we just need to be reminded that there are other ways to get this information. And I think, no, I know that this conversation with Jasmine was a really good reminder that there are other ways we can get this information.
Yeah. It's a really important reminder that the onus is on us to get this information. That for me in my community, the onus is on me to get the
Mhm.
information that I need so that I can be involved locally, politically in my community and
Mhm.
understanding what's going on around here. And I also love the fact that she pointed out that the local newscaster lives in the community, so they also care about the community. What a great conversation. This is
Right?
by far one of my favorites. And I love them all. I feel like I learned so much today.
Mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely. God, what a great discussion.
Thank you, Raquel.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, listeners.
Thanks, listeners.
Thank you, Jasmine.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you like this episode, please share it with a friend.
Or you could leave us a comment and a 5-star review, or email us at madnesscafepodcast@gmail.com.
Thanks, everybody.